Live.
Okay, welcome everybody. It's Monday, May 8th, 2023. This is the executive committee meeting for the Village of Gulf Manor. Mr. Pridnoff, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Knipp?
Here.
Mr. Michelson?
Here.
Mr. Simile?
Here.
Mr. Van Horn?
I'm here. Okay, I looked over the agenda. I don't see anything to change for myself. Anyone else have any? Or my motion to
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We have nobody registered tonight. Has everybody reviewed the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Okay, for new business, let's see, I wonder if, Rob will probably be involved in the other one, so, okay. Regarding the strategic plan discussion that we put on the agenda, and talking to Ron and thinking about it, there's obviously a few things going on. There's some feelings that the plan is not really complete yet. So executive committee is addressing to take that on. But there's two things kind of at play here. One is that we want to get the plan something everybody embraces and get it complete, whatever that process is going to be. But secondly, we do have to, as quickly as possible, get something workable that can be used for filing for grants and all the things that we're working on, to make sure that what we're producing and have something as quickly as possible that will meet that. So one strategy that we discussed was that we would first decide on if we agree on the 6 headings of the plan, and then we'll take each one maybe for 20 minutes per meeting, the next few meetings, to try to clarify them. We could work them, outside of things and start to really get this thing cleaned up. So I'm opening that up for discussion on that. You all have a copy of the draft that we have. So I guess for now, just look at the headings to see.
And is this in a proposed order of priority?
No, I would say if there's, at least my opinion was that we can look at the headings, but if there's something that has to be addressed first to make this workable, I don't mind going out of order.
Okay.
Because if there's something that we need to do for grants or something that kind of clear, I think that's gotta be addressed first.
So, I've got the document up, in case you don't have it in front of you. So there were 6 basic areas of focus that the focus groups that council did prior to October distilled down into. The first was prosperity, sustainability into the future. The second was developing a village center, inspiring a sense of community. The third was livable and affordable neighborhoods. The fourth was health and wellness with a focus on the parks. The fifth was pride and partnership in our regional image. And then, government services and infrastructure maintaining momentum was the last section. So when we had that last meeting in October, the administration had asked council to give some direction in terms of where we wanted to start, because all of these areas are lofty just by first glance, just from a standpoint of being large overarching topics. But we need to add some meat to the bones of the skeleton here. And it seems that as we have broken down other fairly lofty processes with council, the way we have done that is to phase an approach to break things down individual pieces. What the administration would like to know from council is what is the priority? Where do you want us to be focusing? I think I know what that is, but it would be nice to formally state that. Because we know that we have the opportunity with the North Weehee property. We know we have the demolition and compliance issues with the Stover properties. But aside from that, where is our focus as far as moving some of these other projects forward? We have some base things that we're doing to get started. One of the things, just a brief note in my report this evening to council, is that the Lasanville Road traffic study has started. I don't know if you've noticed the pressure sensors in the road, but that will be a very important part of giving us statistical data on traffic flow and pedestrian traffic on Lasanville, which should help us develop future plans. So things like that are happening, and there's stuff like that happening in other places. So it's kind of the ball's in council's court at this point, so to speak, to determine where would you like us to be focusing some of these efforts. And I don't know, I know that the mayor has challenged in a couple of different meetings now for bullet points from council members on priorities that you would like to see. I don't know that, I've not received anything since the last council meeting. I don't know if those are floating around somewhere, but those are all pieces of the puzzle here. So I think the sense of breaking this apart into digestible pieces probably makes sense. Let's see, I had a thought here. So we had put down on the agenda categories and priorities, really looking to say, the categories and priorities came from your discussion as a group, breaking apart those areas of focus. And then we had said, if we're going to go in order of the way the document is written, the first discussion would be prosperity and sustainability into the future.
So then the first step, I guess, would be to determine that we're comfortable with the categories.
Yeah, categories or, yeah. I know the mayor's challenged the titles also, so the categories and how they're named. I guess, let me just add on to that real quick, is that in preparing for tonight, I think I sent everybody a copy of the Deer Park vision plan, and it really struck me, there's a few things that was really stimulating for me. Their contents basically is comprehensive plans, goals, and objectives. That's the first thing after the introduction. Then they have demographic data, which essentially was what was presented by Ms. Bloom last week. And that really prefaces the whole thing. And what I realized was that this is kind of written to us, when really it should be written to anybody that wants to read it, a resident, us. It really gives the whole description, and the people that are going to want to get to know us for grants, and that's how they're going to get to know us. And ours doesn't really include any of that data as a preface to it. Then they have land use, which is kind of in here. Deer Park Business District Plan. We didn't really have not sure if we had a business focus on how we're going to make our, have our businesses be a force and build on it with
I kind of feel like this is really just like the first step
Yep.
before getting to that.
Yep. That's what it feels like to me too. So how we're gonna get to this, I guess, is now the bridge is the work on. What we're gonna try to do.
So the more I'm looking at it, the more prosperity, sustainability in the future, and neighborhoods' livability and affordability have a lot of overlap. And I'm wondering if the goal is to set out, steps and how to achieve these things, if some of those things might be able to be combined and make it a joint focus, since a lot of it's covering general infrastructure in the village, signage, building permits, zoning permits, general maintenance, roadways, walkways. There's slight differences, one's more housing focused and one's more business focused. And I'm not sure why a lot of those couldn't necessarily be combined into one initiative. Just so that, we don't need to retread our steps at a later point.
I guess.
May 5th. May 5th. And then they, everything to be under one name, should be just fine. But dividing it up to make it, people understand where our big focuses are.
Yeah.
Even though some could be overlapping, but we want people to understand.
Hey, Ron, is there any chance you bring this up on the screen?
The Deer Park piece,
Yeah. Maybe you just.
actually, what I was looking for here is We Thrive just redid all of our stuff. And I sent this out to everybody a couple of weeks ago. I thought I posted it on the website, and apparently I didn't.
Well, the diagrams from. Yeah, all the diagrams, you gave it out.
What?
You gave it out.
I just think
Yeah,
it just does not.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, if I look at that closely, if you get a chance to be able to send it to me.
Here we go. So this is,
If it's clarity, what's the difference?
this is the latest demographic data from We Thrive. So they're pulling this from 2021, total population 3782. This is the age breakdown. Our largest demographic area is 30 to 49. 65 plus continues to dwindle. Race and ethnicity, if I can say that. 56% African American. They're referring to it as non-Hispanic Black, 31% non-Hispanic White, and then the others at 7 and 3 and 3. Language spoken at home, 88% English, 9% other languages, 4% Spanish, 15% with a disability. So I'll make sure that this info is out in the resource section of the website. But this would be the addendum to something like what you saw from Deer Park. So they've
Yeah, they
already
included
done
this
this
part of
research
their-
for us.
Kind of they have a whole section after their introduction, say their demographic data. And when I was reading, I was going, if I was a banker that we're gonna maybe talk to, or the county, and maybe somebody who never, or just knows about Gulf Manor, this would be really digestible for them and say, okay, I kind of get a feel for Gulf Manor as they progress to making a decision about it. And then actually, the side note is I was talking with somebody at a soccer game this weekend, and this kind of came up, and they actually mentioned this plan, and I didn't even suggest it. We were just saying we're doing strategic planning. He said, "Have you seen Deer Park?" He said, "That was really," he's a resident. He said, "When I read it, it's inspiring. It really helps me understand what's going on in our village." So it was kind of a backhanded, like, wow, kind of support for something like this.
Good question.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how much the Deer Park initiative cost? Because they hired a Pioneer Group, which is a large civil engineering firm, to do this. And then they also had a commission for this. They didn't, council and the mayor were not part of it. There was a separate commission. I don't know if you noticed that. It was totally different people except for the safety services director.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Okay.
When I was just poking around, I came across this and
I think it's like an 80-page thing, right?
it is,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Pioneer needs some money. Yeah, I'd be curious. Do we want to go down that path or do we want to go down the path of brick laying walls? That's up to you guys.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking is, I guess, is who is the audience for this? And it is our residents, it is people that are renting grants, it is us. And the future people that have our seats, you know, so they can read it, whatever else. And when I look at this to me, at least the structure of it is much more informative to someone. So now, I also think, Lou, that a lot of this data has already been, at least for Gulf Manor size, a lot of this has already been there. We kind of have our own version of it. It just hasn't been collected. So I'm not suggesting hiring another company.
No, I'm not either. So I'm not. I'm just saying, which path are you wanting to go? That's the.
In Henderson's report, when they put it all together, when they started off, they just have 6 different bullet points of what they want, what their plan is. Single names that just, they have people aspiring neighborhood business, image, and service. And under that, they still want to be all of them. It'd be very beneficial, I think, for us, and that's what we're trying to work tonight on, is just to pick what our focus main line is, and then from there, we can put stuff underneath those categories. But I think the goal should really be that when a resident picks it up, he sees that we have his interest most in mind. And one thing that comes that our strategic plan on this one is different is, like, they picked the word like people, right? So right away it says, oh, people are thinking about me. Over here in this plan, it doesn't really say much about the residents. It says what we're gonna do for the streets, and do for the city village. I think we should focus and make a line in there where people feel like, oh, that's me in there. So that's just my recommendation into that.
I think we're talking about 2 different things here. I feel like what you're talking about is the way the strategic plan, once it's hashed out, reads to people and is presented to people, where we need to get through what the strategic plan is before we package it.
Right, so when they passed the resolution or whatever they did, that's what they passed. They passed 5 words that we're gonna work on these 5 things, and then they built on it their entire plan.
Right.
Henderson Township.
Well, I think that's kind of an opposite way to go about it. I think, I agree with you that you're kind of saying 2 different things. It's one, how do we present our strategic plan in both an appealing and clear way to the community, so that, one, people can get involved in it, people can find out what's going on, people can see what the path forward is, but also, second, setting what the strategic plan is. And I don't know if setting a strategic plan by saying, here are the categories, and then backfilling those categories with actual initiatives. It's what are the initiatives that are our strategic plan, and then categorizing those into what.
So can I use an
Easily
analogy?
summarized.
And I'm sorry,
No,
didn't mean to
please.
interrupt. So this just popped in my head. So Crossroads, the church in Oakley, has the 7 hills we stand on, essentially, or 7 beliefs that we stand on. That's kind of what we're looking for here. What are the I don't know the correct number, the 5, 6, 7 things that are our major focus that we're going to commit ourselves to over the next 5 to 10 years, and how do we break that out into feasible, doable things?
And I agree. I think we're all kind of talking a little bit about, this is the plan, but I think it sounds like, and this is what they did at Deer Park, we need to put together kind of the vision statement. And the vision statement says, hey, here's what we want to do in their case, 12 years, 12 years, 2035. And then they've got a vision statement. It's not quite what I would do, what they have here, but once we do the vision statement, then it's, hey, here's our plan, here's our 6 categories, they're named here, and we can rename them or whatever. And those can grow, so it's basically an outline. And so maybe that's kind of maybe where our focus should go is, how do we really concisely put together a vision statement that encompasses, what the village would like to do going forward, And I like the fact that there's just 12, 13 years, it started in 2008, it looks like, and they've really just amended to this document here from that 2008 plan, which I found very interesting. So whatever we put together, has a provision that we can keep growing and adapting, like amendments. It's like, hey, we've now accomplished this, we've got some businesses, we've got our tax revenue up, now's the time to focus on X, Y, and Z. So I think everybody's kind of poking around the same thing. It's kind of like, where do we start? And I feel like we need to start on a broad vision statement of where we want to be in 10 years. Maybe start there, because then everything else is going to apply under that. Just a thought.
I agree about the importance of a vision statement specifically. I think it's aligned with what Mr. Fisher was saying as well. To Lou's point about, which path, what I was envisioning occurring is that one, the plan that we have, I think, has a ton of stuff already in it that's really, really good. I think it's a matter of like an exercise, maybe there's disagreement about what the title of each section should be. All right, should one be people instead, and maybe the content for the people is already in the plan. It's just a matter of changing what those 6 things are. So I was thinking of it as like two exercises. One is looking at those titles and are there any changes you'd like to make in the titles to align either with a different plan that you've seen. And the other piece is, where do you want to put all that content, given what your because those things are the priorities of the village, right? And sometimes it's just a matter of how it's being stated. But given the priorities that you decide, where do you want to put the content then within each one of those? And probably 90% of it, the content's already where it needs to be. There might only be like there may only need to be some slight changes. I think there's another piece there where people can look at those 6, and I actually made a little exercise sheet for this, where look at those 6 those six priorities, and is there anything else that you want to add in there? All right, and then just put those in, and then it's a matter of, I think, just simply giving it to our consultants, and then they'll wordsmith it and put it together. But that's what I was thinking. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but I was thinking it's as easy as just having a little worksheet that says, these are the 6 priorities as they're stated in the current strategic plan. Are you okay with each one? Would you change the way it's worded or something? Second, are there all the stuff that's underneath each one of those priorities, are there any that you would move to a different area? All right. And then third, is there anything that you'd add? And as simple as that, you got something together. Not the only way of doing it. I don't need to be pushing my influence on it. I'm just saying that's the way that I.
I think you're actually describing part of the process, because when I look back at what we did, is we sat in this room and just threw everything on the wall, and they all gravitated into these 6 categories. And then now we've got the categories, and now we're kind of reworking it, and some things are going to move around now. So that's exactly what's going to figure out. Because this was work from us, and this came from us. It's just how it just continues. So.
And I heard some people say, hey, there was stuff that wasn't in there that I think should be in there. And this gives an opportunity for people to, put that in, for people to either kind of shout it down or.
Well, one thing that really came to mind, Mayor Bensmore, was that, when that gentleman came about that nonprofit, that was a powerful night for, I think, all of us, but it was for me. And it was clear that we want to be a community where we are encouraging some kind of stuff to help people. And I don't know if that's exactly flushed out in here, should be where we are searching for grants, is what we discussed, or something like that. I think that night should be in here, and I'm not sure it is, but, you know, that's just, again, my feeling. That was a powerful thing, and we all, it felt like we all were like, how do we do something, to make sure it's part of it?
In all honesty, I'm happy to hear that, but in my list of things that I wanted to see added, that wasn't one of them.
Okay.
It's, I mean, I feel like that falls under some other stuff
Okay.
that we're doing, and actually in discussion with Captain Reed, I heard about some initiatives that he's excited about, and I'm thinking, well, I'll just kind of tag team what he's talking about. So,
Yeah, it's living and breathing, so there's always gonna be, like you said, so.
So to Mr. Michelson's point, the 6 categories that you see here, those emanated out of 14. So there was a lot of consolidation because there was a lot of repetition in other areas. This could be split apart into more categories or could be less. What I like about, sorry, I just dropped my glasses. What I like about the Deer Park piece, which I have up on the screen here, is they do have a comprehensive plan vision statement. And then they list their categories or objectives directly under that. I think that's what gets us started.
Right.
And that's to me, that's kind of an overarching theme of why we're even doing this plan and how we're going to move forward.
I mean, and to just kind of add on to that, Ron, because just as working titles, we can take the prosperity, the village center, implementation, government services, and basically plug it in. You know, we have our overarching vision statement, and then we say, hey, here's what we want to accomplish on a macro scale. Here are the key things we really want to make sure we focus on to obtain that macro vision, but not get as wordy as this document is on just kind of the main outline of what we're trying to do. We can get more detail later, but once we get that, essentially an outline put together, which is mission statement, and then goals and objectives for that mission. I think that's when we have a grid to start working on with each piece, and then we can start narrowing down. Say, hey, we're really going to focus on the prosperity thing, or we really think implementation is probably our biggest problem now. So we can prioritize that based on what we get done and not get done. But it's a living, breathing document at that point if we kind of structure it that way. I think. Just a thought. Maybe tonight we work on vision statement a little bit to really kind of get on a page that we can present to other people to.
Well, along with that, I'd like to make a suggestion that we have either a person or persons that are kind of gonna be, the organizer of what we come up with. I don't know if it should be Ron, if you wanna do that, or somebody that's working the document, creating drafts based on this, because we can come up with this, but I think someone's gotta be central to at least this, let's just call it secretarial for now. Just the pure.
My opinion is this should be council driven. So I don't know if that means, a group of you get together and try to create that statement. I'm perfectly happy to help, but I think this needs to come from the elected representatives of the
Yeah, I was actually
residents.
talking more of the keys on the keyboard stuff. Who's gonna be the person? Because I think some stuff's gonna come out of executive, some gonna come out of the engagement, but obviously council is gonna be the force that.
But,
Does that make sense?
I'm just saying, I suspect Deer Park created a commission to do this because it wasn't elected officials. They could meet and digest and discuss, take input from people, and you didn't have to have a public meeting and do all that, and you're not subject to executive meets once a month, finance meets once a month. This is a commission, if you can find people to staff it, to do that. And my guess is that simplifies the process because you're not relying on trying to discuss this in the council meeting, because a big discussion like that is probably not the council meeting's not the place for that, it should be decision-making, right? So, I'm not saying we find a commission, because good luck finding one, right? But maybe we do. We had some people recently come up and speak, maybe say, hey, come on down, we need some people to help, and I'm just throwing that out because it simplifies it from the standpoint, you get away from this. More than 2 elected officials, you have to announce a meeting, and on and on and on. I just don't see
You
this
said the
as,
commission didn't have any elected officials on?
no, I think the only person that was on there that I saw, okay, was maybe the safety services director. Everybody else was not a mayor or a councilman. Some of them may have been at one point, but currently on that list, if you look at that page, the names under the commission are not the names under the mayor and council. I think that would speed things up because you wouldn't need to have official meetings
And they're taking.
and I mean, look how long you've taken in the executive meeting already, just trying to get going.
Right.
Where a body that's not subject to all these things could work independently if they were willing to spend the time. I think up front you'd spend some time, but I think that time would become less because then they could flush out an initial document, say I want input by, May 28th, and you either do or die, right? May 28th, we want feedback for the commission, and they take whatever feedback they get and they move to the next step. I don't think we can wait another 6 months to get this moving forward. Okay, so I think the way to do that, if you're gonna subject yourself to these official meetings, it will take 6 months. I just think there's gonna be a better way.
So, Mr. Marks, are you recommending we have a separate, maybe a mission statement commission?
I'm not recommending, I'm saying, I think what they did to get away from all this was start a commission, which is, commission's not a committee, right? It's a different body. And you don't have to have elected officials in there, maybe it'd be better not to. And just have a group that works on this, takes this document with a lot of hours spent on this. So there's nothing throwaway about this. I think your point's right. This is probably 90% there, and there could be some other input. I think it was organized a little bit, some things restated, could be maybe a little easier to read. But I think a group of people could sit down, and that might be, 4 or 5 people, could flush this thing out without worrying about the clock. And if it's Monday night, and it's 6, and we got another meeting at 7, and, so anyway, I'm talking as a thought, that's all.
Yeah, and in the end, it's a draft of something that council still has to review and kind of approve or whatever it goes through, but at least it gets this thing produced.
That's right.
And yeah, if that's the process, that's part of what we're trying to, how do we get this done? That's what the process is.
It's a big endeavor, and to Lou's point, doing it once a month is gonna take years. I mean, absolutely years. And that's part of the negatives of bureaucracy. But the other hard part is, do we have the communication with the village to bring people in to have this commission? Because I think it's a very good idea and should be pursued, especially because it gives not just elected officials a chance to review and have a voice in it, but the community comes out and it kind of gets them in a non-frightening way a chance to sit down and have some say in how their community is developed. In the short term, I think honestly, we're going to have to, as a group, whether it's in this committee or as councilmen, we're just going to have to schedule some time more than once a month or twice a month to sit down. It's got to. I mean, just to flesh this out alone, I think it's going to take 4 to 6 meetings. The question is, do we want to put the work in ourselves or delay it again while we get a commission together? I think the commission should happen, but I think we're going to have to, pull our pants up and get to work, roll our sleeves up. Sorry.
Pull your pants.
I don't do well on my public speaking.
No.
But it's we've clearly got to get this. Get a vision statement, get the other stuff together, and then we'll get building the other stuff, I think.
Yes, I do agree with both of you, but I'm a little scared if we're gonna start working on commissions. Number one, we already have a document that is, as you said, maybe 90% here. Start working on commissions, it's a good idea, we could start doing that, but that might hold us up even longer. And if we do get one of us or some administration that's gonna be the initiative, where he has to call everybody, say, listen, this is what I penned up so far. what's your adding, what do you want to add on? Call the next guy, call the next guy, call the next guy, and start over again. This is where I'm up to, do you like it or not, and continue doing it. If we have some guy that's gonna be committed that much, and constantly going through, calling each guy once he gets set up, go to the next guy, send it over, what do you want to add or subtract? And keep on doing that, being the center point as you want, as he said, the secretary, we might be able to get this rolled out much faster. To start pushing this off, that's definitely
Yeah, I don't want
not
to push it
on the
off.
table, and if anything's gonna hold it up, if I'm the commissioner or anything like that, then we should definitely start both at the same time, and see if we can get a commission, but let's see if we can get someone from us that is willing to be that person, the center point, where he's gonna put together a mission statement and contact each one of us, make sure that we all like it or add, and then go back over through the list and be the secretary, essentially. What was that?
I said it just sounds inefficient, but, you know, it gets it started.
Right.
Yeah,
We have.
what I'm saying is just kind of, you know, we're working at the same time. If we're putting our feelers out, trying to get a couple people from the village, the residents to come in and form that little commission, we're gonna have to just keep working and working and working until that comes to fruition. I'm not saying wait for a commission to come together. What I'm saying is we probably need to meet a lot more often, or at least communicate a lot more often to try to
Communicate
some
more
things.
open is more important than meeting more open, because over here, there's a certain amount
Right.
to accomplish. If there's one person that's the designated writer for it, and he makes the effort to reach out to everybody, this whatever, to know if you like it or not, what are you changing? Oh, like, he wants to put that in, let me speak to him and see why he doesn't want it, and then he's the center point, then by the next council meeting, we'll be able to have a
Right,
document
and
that
we,
we could all-
yeah, and we can create basically an editable document for the people involved. They do it all the time, like on Google Docs. You can share it with a bunch of people, and you can give them the opportunity to make their notes off to the side, and the whole group sees it in real time. I don't know how that affects sunshine laws or anything like that, but if you come up with a mission statement,
Not allowed.
It's not allowed.
Yeah, I think it's not allowed.
no,
And Google Docs might be allowed, but a secretary is allowed, if there's
Yeah.
one person. I'm not
Well,
offering my services, I'm not a good writer, but I think you should do that.
I think.
All those in favor?
nay.
You know,
Or we should get our fiscal officer to be a writer,
Because he's got nothing else to do.
He's got nothing to do.
but he's a good writer.
I think that's the reason they went to people independent of all that.
Yeah.
Organization. But that's.
Very sorry.
outside of the mission statement, that just getting people's council members, what I've been asking for, council members' input into how they would tweak it, if they were gonna tweak it at all, or just leave it as it is, how they would tweak it, to have one person, if I'm understanding you correctly, that just is calling each council member and saying, how would you tweak it? What would you remove if you wanted something removed? What would you add? Just having that conversation and saying, you get 5 minutes, all right? You get 5 minutes, I'm gonna give you a heads up, maybe a 3-day warning to work on it, but you got 5 minutes when I call you to tell me what it is. And could the administration find someone that would be willing to do that, since it's, that it is gonna be a lot of time to do that. And I'm thinking it has to be someone that's already familiar with, I've done pretty deep into this, I'm pretty familiar with the structure of it and everything. Not volunteering myself, but I mean, I would defer to the administration. I'll do it if the administration doesn't want to do it, but I would prefer the administration, their familiarity with what is already in the document, to be able to be like, oh, this, because I'm pretty sure you were involved pretty much in drafting that document, right?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking Ron knows what's already in there. So if somebody says, I want this, he's gonna know what's already in there, right? As I said, separate from the process of creating the vision statement, which we could be creating commission in parallel to work on this. And then in terms of having a final phase after that, just, does anybody want to wordsmith it differently? We can share that document then with everyone, all right? And my guess is that 90% of council will think it's fine the way it is, and there may be a couple people that are like, this should be worded this way, this should be worded that way. But again, time limit, it's like, you got 48 hours to submit that or something.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of along what I was saying, but it needs a champion, it needs a person in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's not about, it's really about just pulling together stuff, producing stuff, not necessarily making decisions, but putting it out there, then it's works. How, that's another way, that's a good way to work it. But someone's gotta be the middle of it, or like I said, a person or two.
Roger, can you do that? You wanna be that person?
Well, I can tell you what I'd like to do, if, just for a first step, is I would like to take this and include the data from Liz Blue and from, We Thrive, and get that stuff consolidated in here as an introduction, as part of it. In terms of the mission statement, I'd rather stay out of that, but let that be a standalone thing, but at least in terms of the
So,
next skeleton, I can
The
do that, and
incorporation
then-
of that could be your 5-minute thing that you're saying.
Well,
I
like I
want
said, I'm
these
trying to
bullet
find
points
that
put in.
line.
investment practices and STAR program, like that, like that's maybe a step to achieve that, but it's not. What's our vision of a sustainable future? Like, we want surplus revenue, we want this and that,
And the vision statement needs to have kind of a broader, here's what we want the village to look like. We want to have a vibrant community center, we want lower taxes, and we want a greater sense of community.
Yeah.
Period. Now, how are we gonna do that? These 3 things go to this point, these 2 go to this point, these 2 go to this point. And then you start seeing some of these, because some of these are more action statements, combined
Yeah.
with a wish list, so just a little more clarity there is.
so the major question that needs to be answered is, are we barking up the right tree, essentially? So if council feels that these 6 categories, that the things in there, that there's nothing bogus in there at this point in time, I think we know that things need to be defined and some things need to be separated into vision versus action. What is the next step then for us to start moving forward on this?
I think the next step would be to come up with definitions of what these things are, because we could say we want to inspire a sense of community, but what is that? What is a sense of community? Is it, or, a lot of these things are very broad, which makes us not able to, we didn't define what our categories are. There's a goal, sustainable into the future. Gulf Manor will thrive with a strong community that provides economic opportunities and citizens, sustainable tax revenues to the village. That's great. I think that's an awesome start, but I think we need to flesh out what these categories are so that we can have the correct steps.
I'm sorry, I don't think it's that the goal is to, it's not about inspire a sense of community, it's about village center. And the purpose of the village center is to inspire the sense of community. But it's circling back to developing that village center.
Mm-hmm.
So then looking at, taking that, and this is probably what we need to do for each of these categories. So village center, so if developing a village center is this step that we're trying to accomplish, and the purpose of that is to inspire a sense of community, then what that goal is, and then the action steps. I think you're focusing too much on inspire a sense of community without tying it back to that's what the purpose of the village center is.
Sure.
And I think that that's kind of the case with all of these. So I think focusing on the fact that one of the goals is to have a village center. That part of the vision is for the village to have a village center to inspire a sense of community. And then start to hash out. And that's why I think the purpose of the time we spend on this should be then talking about what is here and what isn't here to achieve that goal. And then same thing with the prosperity, which maybe prosperity isn't the right title for that category, because village center is something tangible that you can truly see. What does prosperity mean? Kind of like parks, village center, they're kind of the same thing. We should be able to identify what steps should be taken to accomplish those elements.
Greg Dale, what is he being paid for? Is he, maybe we get him to write the mission statement and meet with, privately with every council member or any, and go over every part and make sure that everybody agrees with everything that he's writing to these bullet points that he put together and to the mission statement, and have him meet with every single one, go through each one. Is this what you like? Is what do you want to add? What do you want to add out? Put it together and let him put the document together. Is he getting paid for that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Sorry.
Admittedly, I wasn't here at the beginning of this discussion, but if I have grasped things correctly, I just want to remind everyone that once we adopt these broader goals or mission statements or whatever we're calling them, that then there are Hamilton County experts at our disposal to help us flesh out the action steps. And you know, those might be entire meetings about the village center or the parks and different experts for each one. So I think, as we had already tried once, to pass it at this higher level, more broader goals, that if we can move past this step, then we can work with real experts to hash out those action steps to achieve these goals. So I know that we already raised this motion and it failed, so I don't know if we can raise it again, but I would suggest that we adopt it as is, as the broader goals, with the plan on working through each one and fine tuning the action steps.
Because I don't necessarily understand what our goal here tonight was in relationship to this. Because, I mean, I feel like you have kind of been all over the board, almost if we were approaching this anew.
Yeah, well, essentially, since the motion failed, and the best I could grasp, or we could, was that the plan isn't really embraced or supported or completely understood, whatever word you want to choose, to move forward with it. So it came on to us to try to keep moving forward. How do we do it? And that's really the question before us, is this isn't what we want, this is more like what we want, and of course,
What does that mean though? I mean, from a standpoint of, are we talking about from a standpoint of what we want versus what we don't want? Are we talking about what we're accomplishing or what we're focusing on, or how it's presented?
Is this a communications document or is this an actual?
Are we
Setting the
focusing
agenda.
on what's being done or how it's,
probably both, to be honest. I think, really to your point.
But they're so dramatically different.
That's true. And that's why I think they're kind of mixed up, and that's why it's so confusing, if you don't really have the vision clear. And I think it was said in one of the meetings, or more than one, that our objectives are gonna change each year. Like, as new grants come up, we might shift our focus, and this is what's available, this is what we're gonna accomplish this year. So this is gonna change.
Our tactics will change, but the
The
overarching,
vision should be.
the vision, I think this does encompass the vision, but it's a little discombobulated in how it's presented here. I think honestly, our next step is to really just put together that vision statement that actually mentions, 3 to 6 or, whatever points that we have in here. Very similar to what Deer Park did, but if we start there at the beginning of what's our goal, what's our 10-year goal, and we want to do community center, we want to have fiscal responsibility, we want to, help our neighbors, whatever it is. I think that's our first step. That's my opinion. Once we get that, then the rest of this, kind of to Ashley's point, it really kind of falls into place, and we can start parsing through what's being double stated and what our priorities are. But I would think that that's our next step, is just, let's get a little clear on that. Once we have our big vision, and I think Ron demonstrated it really well when he took over as village administrator. He said, these are the 3 things that we've got to attack: fiscal responsibility, safety, and I forget the other one, sorry. Infrastructure. And those things change based on the grants and stuff that we got, for the streets and the parks and stuff like that. And so I think all that's really gonna flesh out once we really get together as one mind and say, hey, here's really what we want the village to look like. And the question is, how do we go about that? Do we do that in a meeting next week with all of us? Do we do it in council or whatever? But I think if maybe everybody went and did some homework and wrote a mission statement, we could probably put them all together and wordsmith something out, within a week. Just a thought for your consideration.
Back to my question, I didn't get an answer. Are we paying him to put together this document, and should he be putting together the mission statement and speaking to all of us to make sure that we all agree with this document, or he's not getting that?
So the consultant is not, we're currently not using the consultant. So when we call him and he does work for us, the clock starts. So
That
this-
gives me the answer.
So we are at a process here that I don't think we're ready for the consultant at this point. The consultant will be able to fine tune this for us once we know what.